Good afternoon. Today is August the 1st, 2014, and we welcome you to the first of a series by Sadovnick Partners, which is on perspectives on board leadership. Today with us we have Jean-Louis Alpeyrie, Mark DiGregorio, and Mark Sadovnick. Gentlemen, welcome. A little bit about our participants. Jean-Louis has 30 years experience in the executive business search with Heidrick & Struggles, doing board and C-level assignments in Asia, Europe, North America for technology, private equity, investment and venture capital, and media and entertainment companies. Prior to joining Heidrick & Struggles, Jean-Louis started his professional life and worked with Booz Allen Hamilton in Paris, New York, and Tokyo, and as a management consultant with McKinsey & Company. He received his MBA from the Haas School of Management at the University of California. He currently lives in New York City, where he's also active in mentoring young technology entrepreneurs. He is an angel investor as well and sits on the board of technology startups. Jean-Louis is fluent in English and French. Mike DiGregorio. Mike brings 30 years experience in senior financial and operating capacities in domestic and international markets. With a CPA background, Mike served in key executive positions in global enterprises such as the Gillette Company, St. John Knits, Jafra Cosmetics, and most recently Korn Ferry International. Mike brings 10 years experience with hands-on assignments in 3 foreign countries and 13 years working with private equity groups including Clayton, Dubilier and Rice, Vestar Capital Partners, and Irving Place Capital. Mike's key areas of expertise include strategic planning, international operations, M&A, investor relations, and cost management. Mike holds both bachelor's and master's degrees in business from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and is fully fluent in Spanish. Currently, he serves as a consultant in many projects, including seats as a board member in 5 companies, 3 public and 2 private. He's also chairperson and/or member of many audit, compensation, and nominating governance committees, and a senior global advisor to an HR technology business venture. Mark Sadovnick. Mark is originally from Montreal, then lived in Miami for many years, and now lives in and is headquartered in Los Angeles, California. Recognized by Business Week as one of the top 150 globally most influential headhunters. He's CEO of an executive search firm ensuring the right fit between individual talents with management and boards of companies. Previously, he was executive director of the global leadership development organization called JC's International, with close to 700,000 members at the time. Mark graduated from McGill University and started his career as a chartered accountant with Deloitte in Canada. He sits on the boards of synergistic organizations, namely World Language Communications, Talentorum Alliance, Verde Exchange Institute, Veteran Tech Brigade, and Corp Shorts Video Productions. He's comfortable in conversational French and Spanish and is a major hockey fan. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's kick off this this perspective on board leadership series, and we'll start with you, Jean-Louis. With over 30 years in the executive search experience and over 10 years in board search, how is the marketplace today different than what it was 10 years ago?
Yes, you're right. The market is different. And because of that, assignments for boards have become more difficult to complete, at least in a short amount of time. It's a demand and offer thing, a demand and supply problem. You have a high demand for board members for all kinds of companies, from small to very large companies, from private or startups to public companies. And the supply has not increased following that. So you really find yourself in a situation where looking for somebody in particular, if it is to be part of one of the committees, the audit committee, for example, which tends to be the most difficult board assignments, the supply of candidates is not that high. And so searches last long, and searches have become more difficult, and from the company perspective, more expensive to conduct. So that's one issue. The other issue is that you have a large number of companies, some very prestigious like General Electric or Disney, which do not allow their executives to serve an outside board. And so it eliminates quite a number of very competent, very experienced people who would be in many ways ideal board members, but cannot serve on any outside board. And then you have another large number of companies that allow their executives to serve on at most one board. So again, you have also here the supply that is reduced by that. And that happens at a time where board membership is much more time-consuming than it was in the past. You have to spend much more time to prepare the board, you have to spend more time on the board, you have to deal with issues that are more complex probably than they were in the past, in particular when they're related to growth and strategic issues. So that also reduced the number of potential board candidates because many people just don't have the time or won't be allowed by their employer to spend too much time working for somebody else. That, I think, are the big differences and explain how difficult it is very often nowadays to find a good board member.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. Mike, what are your thoughts on this, and how does it apply to today's market when it comes to looking for board opportunities for an individual?
Okay, I think Jean-Louis raised a variety of good points. The market today is still extremely competitive, especially for candidates looking for board opportunities. A couple things have happened. One is people in general, on average, are staying longer on boards. Used to see cases with early forced retirement. Today, it's the variety of situations with people staying on boards longer. And so in terms of the supply for talent, what Jean-Louis said was interesting because, in a sense, the number of highly qualified board members, in fact, may have possibly gone down. And I think in part that's because the ranks of corporate American executives has probably shrunk a little bit. Companies focused on cost control and efficiency. You've actually seen a compression of jobs at the top. And I think that over the years, you've actually got fewer people moving through those ranks with talent. But at the same time, you also see a lot of these people having been forced out of C-level jobs in corporate America. So in a sense, there's probably more people on the street looking for opportunities. And so combined with that has made it even more difficult. I think there's a couple things happening here, and I think process takes longer. It's longer to really fill a board seat. The companies that I've been involved with in particular seem to be a lot more particular, really focused and very specifically looking for very specific attributes to fill board opportunities. So that also extends the time period and length of searches that go on for board members. So definitely a variety of things going on at the same time.
Mark, from your perspective and taking off from what Jean-Louis and Mike said, tell us what the major differences are in the makeup of boards in today's business world.
Well, first of all, I thought that ding was really interesting. Is that our message when we talk too long? There's a ding that goes on. But and the reason I say that, I did another video interview recently, and there was all sorts of different noises in the background, and we said, this is real life. This was happens today. So that's part of the difference in today's business world is the technology talking to everybody from home offices, from other offices, noises interrupt everything. So boards can actually engage in a lot more different ways than they used to before, including like we're doing right now through Skype. But some of the big differences I've seen are certainly transparency. It's no longer, if you will, the good old boys club anymore. There's a lot more liability, but there's also a lot of the hands of the corporation, if you will, are forced to be totally transparent. Way more governance, if you will, and everything's heard, everything's connected these days. So that's a big thing. I think also diversity is a big difference, which relates to what both Jean-Louis and Mike were saying, and talking about right fit. And diversity doesn't just mean white, black, and women anymore. It's young, older, different expertise, etc., which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But and it's as someone told me recently in another interview, it's not just right fit doesn't necessarily mean it's the fit because that person's just like you, so you're going to be more comfortable. It's the right fit for what's needed on the board and what's needed for the organization. And I think that's a lot of times before 30 years ago, whenever we're talking about, it was more of, hey, I like you want to come on the board type of deal. The other thing I think is international. I mean, we all deal with, well, speaking of international, on this call alone, we've got in Italy, France, US, and Canada. So there's a little example of international right there. Pretty good experience I'm happy to be involved with. And but I think there wasn't as much global boards, I'm sure, back then. And they weren't able to, as I said, engage as effectively as is possible now. But also take specific qualifications to be on a startup, if you will, that has the possibility now more than ever of going global like never before, or a big company that's gone global, and what type of board makeup and what type of board culture, etc., is needed is also, I think, a big difference, and hopefully a big positive difference for today's business world.
Thank you, Mark. And on your points of right fit, composition of boards, what's needed, Jean-Louis, what can you share with us when it comes to the specific skills that companies, organizations are looking for when it comes to their board members?
Well, I like to think when you make a board, it's like you make a puzzle. So you have to think in terms of what are the, like a puzzle. The puzzle, when you start a puzzle, you think about what it's going to look like at the end of it. It's the same thing for a board. You have to decide at the beginning, what kind of skills do you need? And what skills you have. So it's like a puzzle. Some of the puzzle already exists. Some of the skills are already there. So you need to find out what are the skills you don't have that you need to have to complete your board and have a complete board answering all your needs in terms of skills, experience, and as Mark said earlier, diversity in terms of age, in terms of nationalities, maybe international experience. So that's the way you start. If you do that, if you start thinking, this is all that I need at the end of the process, all the skills I need, all the experiences I need, then you can expand your supply of board members by reaching out to people that maybe you would not have thought about at the beginning. I mean, traditionally, for a long time, board searchers and boards were made of people who were at C-level. There were CEOs, COOs, because that seemed to be the right thing to make a board. Now, if you do that properly, you can reach out to people who may not have the title, may not have the age, as Mark said earlier, maybe younger, but have the kind of experience and skills that you need. So suddenly, your potential, your targets to find out board members is much more numerous. There are many more potential candidates, and it's easier to find out what you need and to fill your skills. I think if you do that properly, then you can go after making your board in the right way.
Interesting. Love the puzzle imagery, because in my own consultancy, I often talk to my clients and tell them that at the end of the day, they have to imagine things as if they were a big box of Lego and Lego parts, and you have to have an idea of what you want to build at the end. And the more we go forward in time, the more intricate the Lego sets become. So, Mike, that being, taking on what Jean-Louis said, what are the unique qualifications that boards look for when putting this puzzle together?
I think it's actually a fallacy, because that's exactly how companies today are really looking at is, what talent do they have on the board, what's missing, and very importantly, it's not only looking at what they're doing today, but how companies are changing and how that will evolve over the next 3 and 5 years. That's what kind of makes it really tricky in thinking about talent. But it's an exciting time for people that want to get on boards. It's interesting, for example, in terms of people like me that with financial background. It's been an interesting 10 years following Sarbanes-Oxley laws and Dodd-Frank. So there's a big focus on governance today. Companies, especially public companies, of course. So governance is a big topic, and so they're looking at people in a lot of financial people that have experience working in areas of governance, filings, issues like that, cybersecurity, IT people. 10 years ago was the beginning of the tech boom in early 2000, 2001. Much greater demand for people that have come up through IT ranks. Cybersecurity today is one of the big issues. People that have experience in that, and IT areas in general also very big. Risk management is another huge topic. Especially public companies, focusing on areas of risk scrutiny by the SEC. So that's become a big topic. But interestingly, when we talk about boards, I think we tend to think of the bigger companies typically, but also numerically, probably more of the boards looking for executives to fill seats are probably in the smaller, mid-size, startup and early stage companies. So it also has created a very unique focused opportunity for people that have tremendous skills in branding and marketing, building the top line. Many companies I'm involved with now, trying to go overseas, become more global. So people with international, global experience living overseas, tremendously applicable. So there's really a lot of things going on. Companies that want to grow through M&A transaction, a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on. So people that have M&A experience also big opportunity. So there's an amazing amount of exciting things going on, and there's opportunities for a lot of people with good talent.
So, Mike, if we take what you've said, as to what boards are looking for in individuals, Jean-Louis, your whole, visual on the puzzle. Basically, it's two different ways of coming to the concept of a right fit. And, Mark, this is something that you always continuously emphasize, which is, the right fit. How does that really all come together when it comes to a board?
Well, it does come together, and I always find it interesting that we go to puzzles and Legos, which we did as kids, to figure out what we need to do as adults. There's that old poster I remember. Remember that poster that said everything you ever needed to know you learned in kindergarten? It's a poster from a long time ago, and it's partially true. So, you all know that I compare a lot of things to sports. The good and bad, whatever. I compare a lot of things to sports, and I had been talking to an executive at a pro NHL team recently, and I know some of the management people and the players, and they're talking about how they're building a team, and it's always the same thing. You've got cultural issues, social issues, the relationships. Trust is a big factor in leadership, and putting together a board. And it's the same thing as a sports team. They talk about how they interview for character. They already know the talent, the same way you already know the talent of the individual that's going to come onto a board. So what's the big distinction? The big differentiation is, can we all work together? Can we complement each other? Can we trust each other? In this, Mike was talking about cybersecurity. I talked to somebody recently who gave me the story about, and this came up in our Leadership and Prejudice panel as well, about, I used to be able to have a meeting, he said, and bring everybody into the office, talk straight, talk direct, heart to heart, and we get things done. Now, before the meeting's over, it's already on Twitter, he tells me. And so, you got to be able to trust that you're, to talk to each other confidentially, and it's not going to get out as well. But the big thing that this executive of the sports team said is, we want to win championships. That's our goal. That's equivalent to what the puzzle looks like at the end of the day. That's a championship. But he said, we're not going to win championships every single year. We'd like to, but we're not. But what we can ensure is that we have a winning season, or multiple consistent winning seasons over time. And that starts from the top, the culture that's created by the leadership at the top of the company, top of the board, down. And that relates to all the points we're talking about here about the right puzzle pieces. In the case, what I'm talking here is the cultural relationship, the trusted relationship, the complementary expertise to bring into each other, etc. And if you build that for the long term, multiple winning seasons, rather than the example that you've heard me all say before about, you tell a coach if he doesn't win this year, he's fired. Well, then he doesn't have any incentive to build the puzzle. He's going to do the corner of the puzzle and hope that's enough to keep him having a job. So, bottom line, what I'm saying in the long way versus telling a short story long is that you've got to be able to build build a team that is committed and has a vision to the long-term, winning seasons, which is the full puzzle, which is the big picture, and that means multiple winning seasons means multiple profitable, successful years of your business.
Yeah, I just I'd like to add
what Mark and Mike have said very briefly, because I think it's extremely important, coming back to the puzzle or kind of thing. It's the time issue. It's like a three-dimensional puzzle, because you cannot only think in terms of this is the skills I need today. I mean, you have to think in terms, what are the skills I will need 3-5 years down the road? I don't think you can go nowadays way beyond 5 years, already very long term. But you have to be able to think in terms of what it is, where I want to go, and what kind of skills do I need in order to get there, and to be helped in order to get there. So it requires quite a very important thinking in terms of what I need today and what I will need tomorrow. And I think it's not always enough properly. So people may inherit a number of skills, and then those skills become obsolete. And as Mike mentioned earlier, as people tend to stay on the board, then you may end up with a board that in the next 2 or 3 years no longer really fits your requirements. And that's why you have to think so carefully about what you will need in the future.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one thing, and I think it's very interesting, what we've talked about here. We probably, make this sound a little bit mechanical. If you think of the process, the thing we're filling in puzzles. And I think, one thing just to emphasize, especially for people that are into the market looking for their first board opportunities, I'd like to expand a little bit on what Mark said about relationships. And I think what happens is the processes start with a lot of this mechanical, what do I need? But what's critically important, as it typically gets more towards the tail end of a process, they really start looking at, especially for candidates, how they're going to fit in and relate to the board members. Personality becomes a huge factor. You have some boards where CEOs are very strong. They really want to control and dominate boards. That's a fact. They get threatened by people that might be a little bit strong or aggressive. And so what happens is they start really thinking a lot about how people fit. And so, one of the things we provide in our practice is the sensitivity, especially for new candidates that are not fully in tune, of making them understand how the relationship part of the process and dealing with whether it's a nominating committee or actually final step of board members and how they think about that, and help them really understand how to really bring themselves to the front in a relationship picture. So.
Yeah, well, if I could just add one last thing too, why not? On both those things, absolutely. That what this executive told me about the right fit, not necessarily being the right fit for one person who likes that person, but the right fit for the whole team. And I'll complete in that sense on what this sports executive told me too, that relates to what Jean-Louis also said about the future. He said we have to have we have these veterans we're keeping because they're going to be able to help the rookies on the team develop and mature, so that 2 years from now they're going to be the leaders on the team, et cetera, et cetera. And we have an experienced goalie, and we're bringing in this other goalie who's growing, and he's going to be able to effectively be a player coach for that goalie. So you're building a long-term puzzle. Almost on a long-term vision to make your team and as a result your business successful. So great points all around.
Most definitely, and if I just may make a small contribution listening to the three of you as we conclude today's session, it seems that we covered, when it comes to the perspectives on board leadership, the fact that we have form, we have function, we have fit, and then we have the perspective with the future. Those seem to be all elements that come into play.
The 4 Fs.
The 4 Fs, there you go. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to our next installment of Perspectives of Board Leadership. Have a great afternoon.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.